All right. Let me just make sure that it's getting set up. All right. Hi, Tammera. I'm so excited to be here with you. And for all the ladies that are watching live or in the replay, go ahead and let us know where you're watching us from, where you live. And I'm so glad that you're here to be part of this dialogue around the sacred masculine and all that the masculine needs and all the masculine gives to us, especially in a time where culturally there's a lot of male bashing or talk about toxic masculinity, which we're going to get into tonight. But first, I'm going to have Tammera introduce herself for those of you who don't know her yet. Tammera, will you just tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do for us in our program, Queens of Pleasure?
Yeah, I've been a coach since 2003, and 10 years was actually with a masculine company, Tony Robbins. And what I realized through that is actually my true calling and passion is to really help women connect with their true self and their heart and support them in, just accessing their natural gifts, strengths, and passions so they can create those fulfilling lives and relationships. And so I'm really just honored to be a part of your mission. And I'm just one of the coaches on board with your company.
Amazing. Yeah, Tammera is our Heartset coach. She is a Jedi at mindset, and she's also a Jedi and super skilled at connecting to our heart and to our bodies and making sure that everything we're doing transformation wise is really full spectrum, heart, head, and body. So I'm so grateful to have her. And I know the ladies we work with, our queens, are also so grateful to have you as part of their support system through the program. So with that being said, let's dive in. Let's talk about all about men. There can be so many misunderstandings. And one of the intentions I want to set is not only, of course, better understanding the masculine, but really appreciating the masculine. It's one thing to intellectually understand something, and that may or may not serve us when we're feeling triggered or feeling anxious or wondering why he hasn't texted us back. So I just encourage everyone watching to maybe let go of the mental desire to find the answer or to, understand and drop into your heart so that you can really feel and appreciate, which is one of the gifts of the feminine to the masculine. So yeah, Tammera, let's talk about what is masculine energy. I have thoughts on that. You have thoughts on that. But what do you consider to be masculine energy?
Yeah, I think a couple of the elements of masculine energy that stand out for me are definitely like direction and single focus. They're very achievement, accomplishment focused and like to excel. And I think that can also bring in like moving towards a purpose or building something like a mission. So you think about building a kingdom, right? In the real world here, it might be building a career or a business or a legacy or a family and providing for it. So that's definitely masculine energy. I think they're stimulated by competition, adventure, and challenge. They need to win, like the points on the board, just that drive to be better. And then solving problems, I think, is another thing that they thrive on. So there's that analytical, logical piece. So those are a few things. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I love those descriptors and it feels spot on. I was nodding my head the whole time. It's funny because Jason just a few days ago said, I said, oh, it seems like you've been a little bit stressed, what's up? And he's like, yeah, I'm just really stuck in this sense of am I winning or losing? And he just said it so clearly and so openly. And I was like, wow, that must be really hard to like wake up every day and kind of be keeping score with yourself or keeping score with the world. And it really resonated with me just how differently, we're kind of approaching our experiences, even though him and I have so many things in common. I wake up and I think about how do I want to feel today? What sort of word or color could I embody? So I wanted to say while the airplane or helicopter is overhead, for those of you that are watching, I have had some tech difficulties with my Wi-Fi lately, and so if for whatever reason we the broadcast ends at any point. If it's early on, Tammera and I will record the rest in a separate video and just upload it later. Or if it's fairly along in the broadcast, then we'll just add a few talking points to the post. So thank you for your understanding on that. I really don't have that much to add of what you said about the masculine. I think it's spot on. And I think as women, you know, we have masculine energy too. And I think it gets confusing because sometimes we think, well, you know, if the masculine is these things, like I can't be those things, or I have to be less than, or okay, that means I just need to be passive or the damsel in distress. And, you know, it's not true. It's about understanding the masculine in our partner, understanding the masculine within ourselves. And there's going to be times when we need to bring that masculine energy in our lives. But I think it's important that we understand the law of polarity. You know, there's the law of attraction, right? But there's a law of polarity. And a lot of women are like, well, you know, everything is a mirror and I'm using the law of attraction, but I can't seem to attract a high quality guy. It's like, well, because you're not understanding that there's also the law of polarity and opposites attract. And so it's really nice to be able to understand masculine energy so that you can create a dynamic partnership where there's still a lot of passion and a lot of, you know, intimacy in that way. And there's also a lot of desire to want to be with each other instead of feeling like you're just turning into roommates. So what about the masculine do we want to express that we feel is important in the world? I mean, I think I'll just go first. For me, masculine in the world, that sense of getting something done and integrity and commitment and follow through is so important. I don't think we can really survive in our world without that. But I think that we've not always had healthy ways to express that, or we've been expected to express our masculine in lower integrity ways. So for you, Tammera, yeah, why do you think the masculine is important within us and then within the world?
Yeah, and you do such a great job in the program of helping us balance the internal feminine and masculine. And I think I'd bounce off of what you said. I think it helps us take action on what matters to us, whether it's what we want to create, creativity or intuition or our visions. I think it also helps us be more in our power and set healthy boundaries and be able to hold them more consistently, like hold that tension. And also have the tenacity, that perseverance, that discipline to like overcome setbacks or challenges. So that resilience.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I really felt that in my spine, in my body when you were talking about that. And I loved what you said about tension. You know, on one of our group calls, I think it was on Monday for our program, Queens of Pleasure, someone had brought up, you know, the masculine, they had learned in the course, you know, the masculine thrives on tension much more than the feminine. And so we were talking about that. It's like the masculine doesn't mind being like, here's where I am and here's my goal. What do I need to figure out to do it? How can I be more resourceful? How can I be more determined or tenacious, like you said? Whereas the feminine, typically, if we feel a big gap between where we are and where we want to be, feminine energy within all of us will feel maybe whiny or discouraged, or maybe get into victim mode or blaming or other things. That's an unhealthy aspect of the feminine. We have toxic feminine, just like we have toxic masculine, you know, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But what I love about the masculine energy related to what you said is that level of healthy tension and being okay with that, because that can provide such friction in a good way, like the catalyst that propels us forward instead of giving up on ourselves or just resorting to self-soothing about everything, but never leaving the house, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of like, I remember a metaphor like that being with the tension. It's like dancing, right? You need a certain amount of tension.
Totally. Yeah, one of our first dates, well, I think maybe our like third or fourth date, Jason planned he took us to a tango dance like intro night. And there was a lot of tension. Like we had to really push on each other in order to keep our chest area connected as it's supposed to be. So I love that metaphor. That's perfect. So yeah, I'm just kind of referencing the talking points you and I had created before. Let's dive into the toxic masculine. Like I'm going to share some thoughts and then I want to hear your thoughts. And for those of you that are watching live or in the replay, I want to hear your thoughts about what you consider to be toxic masculine or experiences you've had of that. You know, our culture is much more aware of this now because of the Me Too movement and all the things that have happened whether it's in the workplace or whether it's at a bar or a party, or, you know, violation. Violation is a huge aspect of toxic masculine. It's I'm going to take whatever I want whenever I want, and I'm not going to think about any implications. It's direction without any responsibility, without any integrity. And that can obviously be a huge problem in society and for individual people. When I think about the other aspects of toxic masculine, it's about control, you know, trying to control others or control the way that we get to an outcome. I think about the feminine as the means to the end, and the masculine is kind of the end. And so the toxic masculine is like, I don't care about the means to the end. You know, there's some quote that's like, a goal, even if reached violently, is still accomplished. And I was just like, ew, it's so horrible. You know, it's just like a perfect example to me of the toxic feminine, of the toxic masculine. And that shows up in dating and relationships when a man doesn't pay attention to your boundaries, or when he, you know, is trying to control the pacing of the relationship physically or otherwise. Or if you see a man kind of walking down the street and he's kind of got his arm around a woman and she looks maybe okay with it, but also you're like, wow, that doesn't look right, you know? Yeah, what do you feel like as part of the toxic masculine? How does that manifest itself from what you see?
Well, I think what I was present to when I was kind of with this question and kind of like prepping for it a little bit is it's almost like a code of behavior or a conformity that restricts the amount of emotions that are really allowable for like boys and men to express. So it's almost like the range that's acceptable is like aggression or anger. And so it's like strength is everything, and then emotions are a weakness, right? So it's kind of like what you were saying. And if you think about what was kind of set up in society or culture about like the alpha man, so it's about physical power, sexual conquest, you know, dominance, control. And so there's that thing, I think, that's been in the underbelly, kind of like men have higher status or something like that. And then it's almost like there's this shaming that can happen with men if there's any, like, let's say, more feminine traits, like emotional vulnerability or not aggressive enough or something. And it's like your man card gets taken away. So I don't know, I'm just kind of seeing a little of those things. And I think it's right. I think what it can, like, the effects of it are definitely more violence, promiscuity, substance abuse, dysfunction in relationship.
Yeah. I'm so glad you mentioned that, because when you said the word substance abuse and dysfunction in relationship, what came up for me was that the toxic masculine not only is the, you know, aggression, but it's also the dysfunction where there's just a total withdrawal, like addiction, like you said, whether it's to substances or porn or other things. It's almost like, I loved what you said about the emotional piece. It's almost like we haven't given men permission to be emotive or expressive or even to feel. And so therefore they either can be going towards or going away, and that's it. They can't just be with whatever is coming up for them. And so they have to retreat. And I think a lot of women then feel frustrated because, you know, a guy will go hot or cold, or you'll reach a new milestone in the relationship, like exclusivity or physical intimacy or just a deepening emotional connection. And a lot of times we feel that pulling back from the masculine. And I'm wondering if, as a society, as we become more skilled and accepting of the masculine being in his emotional body, because every human being has an emotional body, it's not just men or women, you know, ideally then there's space for someone to say, hey, you know what? I'm loving getting to know you, and I've neglected my work the last week because I've been so excited. You've been on my mind a lot, and I really need a few days to just process and get back into my stuff, but I'm looking forward to seeing you later this week. Like, wow, I think most women would love to hear like a clear message like that doesn't, to me, take away from the masculine. If I heard a guy say that, I'd be like, wow, he's a badass. He knows what he wants. He's going after it with his work. He recognizes his responsibilities. He wants to honor his responsibilities, and he doesn't want to leave me hanging. You know, so I think there can be so much up-leveling in relationship when we do relax this tight grip on what we're defining as masculinity.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah, so let's talk about the healthy masculine. We talked about the toxic masculine, and we said at the beginning some of these really healthy traits. Other ones, oh, actually, you know what? The question is more about what builds the healthy masculine. So the toxic masculine is created when we don't allow men to have emotion. It's created when, as a society, we've decided that the outcome is more important than the process. When we have this culture, like locker room culture and all of those things. But yeah, what builds the healthy masculine? I'm going to let you start with that, and then I have some thoughts too.
And I took it from the framework of like what we women can do to build the
yes,
healthy masculine.
totally.
Yeah. So I think it's having like a genuine belief and respect in our man, and like trust in his abilities, his capacities. So whether that's in solving a problem or taking on a challenge or creating or building something, or just establishing himself in the world and allowing him to figure it out and be frustrated and kind of go through it, right? And what he needs from us in those moments is the belief in him and trust in him and encourage and support him and allow him to like overcome it and figure it out. I think the other thing is respecting his need for challenge and like adventure or freedom. And I think along with that, it's really listening and learning for why that matters to him and what it gives him and who he can be when he has it. So I think that's something. And then appreciating and admiring who he is and then what he gives. So our receptivity to who he is and what he gives. That would be a few things.
Yeah, those are amazing. And I loved what you said about listening, because we get so attached oftentimes as women. I'm speaking for all women generally, but it's something I hear over and over again, and that I've been through and all of our clients have been through, where we're so focused on our goal, you know, maybe in an unhealthy way of getting married or having a baby or whatever it is, that we almost are putting him into a slot in our life and sizing him down instead of letting him be the fullness of who he is and expand. And like you said, have that challenge, have that freedom, and then be devoted to the man that he's becoming versus trying to control him into being something that meets some fantasy that we may have had when we were, 16 years old or something like that. So when you were talking, I felt like just this big energy behind my shoulders. It kind of felt like that strong, universal, masculine archetypal presence that's so needed and so important, because if we're asking culture to change, we're asking society to change, we're asking men to change, but we're telling them, you're doing it wrong, don't do it this way, this is what I need you to be in order for me to feel happy. Like, no one who can be their highest self, under those conditions. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to add about building a healthy masculine that we can do?
Yeah, I just want to build on what you had shared, the things about trust and all the pieces. It was really layered and beautiful that you just offered for us. And I think the part that you said at the end about receptivity and responsiveness, that really feels true for me. I think a lot of times as women, we might vacillate between, and I see women do this all the time, between being mothering and smothering, or being like, well, I'm just going to move on, or I'm just going to, do this or that. It's like, we have to find that grace within ourselves, and really that practice within ourselves. Like, it is a practice. It's an art to be able to hold space for yourself as you're going through your process, and for your guy as he's going through his process, without getting in that mothering and smothering or kind of misindependent energy. And I think a lot of times we forget that men are leading, the masculine is leading based on our feedback. They're not just leading because they just, want to like chase windmills, they're leading because they're attuned, they're present to so many different things going on. One of which is a woman's desires. I mean, I've never met a healthy masculine who didn't absolutely want to see the women around him light up, who didn't want his mom to feel totally amazing, that she's the best mom ever, who didn't want his wife or his girlfriend sexy, radiant, and beautiful. And I think we maybe forget that the masculine, when intentions. And so from that place of trusting them and assuming positive intent, then feeling free to share our desires, not because he has to make them come true, but because what a gift to help him lead ourselves and the relationship and his purpose in the world even better. And so that can look like changing the way that energy is flowing through your body to be more, when I say open, I don't mean like you need to be desperate or something, but if you love that he opened the door for you, instead of just sliding in the car and kind of freezing or twirling your hair, looking out the window and going on and on unconsciously about your day or what one of your girlfriends said to you, what if you, as he got in, like gave him a huge smile and were like, oh, that felt so good. I love being treated so kindly. Like, thank you. And giving him a huge smile. I mean, he might feel high off of that for like hours, I think we've all seen men kind of puff up. Another example I'll use is you see people walking into, let's say, a coffee shop, and you can imagine, when a woman is walking in and she's got her armor on and she's like, nope, I can handle it. And she opens the door and she walks through, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? I'm not saying we have to be old fashioned, but then I think about instances where I've seen or I've experienced for myself where the woman kind of slows down, takes a breath, gives a little smile, the guy opens the door. And this doesn't just have to be female male, it could be female female or male male or whatever. But when one of the partners is kind of other person provides something like opening the door, there's a beauty to that. There's a yumminess to that feels like instead of two bodies of energy kind of going parallel without any real connection, it's like opportunities for connection. And then who knows how that influences the rest of their day. So I kind of went on and on, but I think like feedback and receptivity and sharing desires, all of that really builds a relationship. And a relationship just doesn't happen because we make a vision board or, we find the perfect person. Like, we have to become the sort of person who's capable of having a really high quality relationship. And that takes understanding these skills and these nuances that we teach our clients in our program and that are so important for understanding the polarity that can keep a relationship really magnetic and really romantic. Let's talk about what the masculine appreciates about the feminine. We shared how when we light up, the masculine really appreciates that. But what other things do you find the masculine appreciates about the feminine, or what can we give to the masculine?
Yeah, I think the masculine is definitely nurtured by the feminine with our affection, with our belief in them. When we listen to them, I think that renews and strengthens them. I'm going to just bounce off when you were talking about passion. There was an article I read or referenced that scientists actually measured women's voices, that it's processed in the same part of men's brain as where they process music. So it's like when we're expressing our passion, it like gives that masculine a sense of well-being. So yeah, just like,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And
I think when we're connected to our body and like our sensuality, definitely like it increases attraction and polarity, but it also allows us to be more deeply connected to ourselves. And so it enhances that emotional connection with the masculine.
mm-hmm.
And then I think, again, I would say the receptivity, and that's even just responding to like how he arranges time and energy and resources. And when we appreciate all that, it's like we honor that, and that gives back to him. And I agree with the puffing up. I even noticed that with my nephew last Christmas when we were playing a game together, and I was a disaster at this beanbag thing, and they were going all over the place, and he was like going under the cupboards and getting them for me and keeping score for me. And I was just like, thank you. You're so my hero and you're saving me. And just like, thank you for providing this. And he would do the same thing. He's just like puffed up and kept doing it.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. I love hearing that story because, sometimes as women, we feel like, well, if someone was complimenting me a lot, I might feel a little self-conscious. And so we can be sparse with our feedback, and when we're more open and generous with our feedback, it just creates this virtuous cycle where then the masculine wants to continue to do things for us, not because we can't do it on our own, but because he has that desire to meet our needs. I love that. Yeah, I think other ways that we can give back to the masculine and you know, appreciate the masculine is, and have him appreciate us and vice versa, is adornment. And this is a really misunderstood concept because I think a lot of women, myself included, in years past, have thought adornment was about looking the way that the media tells you to look. You know, it's about wearing a certain shade of lipstick or being a certain size or looking at pornification of the female image. But when you really talk to men like we do on our man panels, when the men come on our calls every few months or so to answer questions for our clients and share their experiences and stuff, those are really rich and juicy. But they're never talking about the way a woman looks. It's always about her energy. Just like you said, how embodied is she? How is she connected to her emotions? Can she be vulnerable? Can she open her heart? Like, those are the things that really take a man's breath away. And it's not about how you look. And so the way I think of adornment is adorning yourself as an expression of your internal feminine essence. And we all have a unique feminine essence. You know, in the course, people learn how to find their own, how to draw that out, how to embody it in a way that feels authentic, because it has to be authentic. Men are much more sensitive to energy than we think they are. We might be like, oh, men don't understand. They're actually very attuned to energy, much more than, you know, we give them credit for. And so I like to think about it as adorning the moment. Like, how can you adorn the moment? Maybe it's you throw on a scarf before your date. Maybe it's you do a little dance in your kitchen before your date, and he doesn't see an outward, you know, tangible expression of it, but he feels the energy that you took a second to get connected to your body and have some fun before you met up with him. Or maybe you're adorning the moment just by the way you're moving. If you're enjoying a glass of wine and just sucking it down and being like, oh, how many countries have you traveled to? And what did you do for work last year? And making it like an interview, you know, like really savoring the wine and letting him know energetically by the way that you move your body when it feels good. You know, I have this little thing I do subconsciously, but people have commented on it to me, and I call it my food happy dance. Like, when I'm eating something that tastes delicious, my body just will start wiggling. I'll be like, oh, you know, sometimes I'll even like clap, and I won't even realize I'm doing it because it feels like my cells are singing. They're just getting so nourished and so loved on by the food that I'm just expressing it. But you know, adorning the moment through letting your body be expressive, letting the energy move through you. I think it just creates a lot of magic and a lot of beauty. And masculine is attracted to beauty because they don't access it in the same way as we do. And so it feels like a real gift to them.
That's beautiful. I love that. Your cells are singing.
Yes. It feels like it sometimes, you know, like even when you have just like a good green juice or a piece of chocolate cake or an oyster, I mean, it could be something simple, but like when it's so well done, you know, it's just so nice. So let's move into dating. You know, how do we know if we're in our masculine on a date or in a relationship? This is a big one because a lot of women might not realize that they're in their masculine on a date or in a relationship because it's just become who they are in their day-to-day life. I'll start with a few things and then let's just keep layering it on. So one of the ways that I alluded to earlier that you might know that you're in your masculine if you're on a date is if you're really getting in your head, you know, like, okay, what's the next question I gotta ask him? Or like, how do I make sure that this goes well? Or how do I make sure he asks me out again and that he texts me back? Like, if you're overthinking things and have a lot of mental energy, that means you're probably less in your feminine, you're probably less connected to your body, and you're probably less connected to your feelings and desires because everything I just said about him, you know, tending to his needs and kind of micromanaging him and his experience versus like really being grounded and rooted in yourself and you feeling good first and foremost. What else do you think about when we might be in our masculine on a date or in a relationship?
Yeah, I think too, like, especially if we come to like a connection or a meetup, like right after work and our work, when we're in work mode, right, which is usually about results or directing outcomes or achieving goals. So if we're kind of still in that mode or way of being, we probably are coming from our masculine. And kind of along with that would be almost like being competitive a little bit. So trying to be a better man. So I can notice when I'm in it, like if I'm leading with my resume and I want to impress with my accomplishments or my achievements. And I think that's different than expressing our passions. We can still talk about like work and what we do in our businesses with passion, because that lights us up, right? But when it's a different energy with competition, it's usually like that one upping or like, yeah. So I think those are a couple of ways. I think the other one would be our body language, right? So if we're like, especially at work, if we're like walking really fast and we're tight and we're tense, versus maybe like being, like you said, more soft and open and flowing might be another way just to tune in, like what's happening in my body.
Yes. And I just want to share a little story that came up for me when you were talking about that. You know, one of the women in our program, she was out and about on a day, and she went to the bank, and a guy there started chatting her up. And then later she went to a barbecue and two different guys started chatting her up, and she'd only been in the course a few weeks. And she's like, I can't believe how much has shifted. You know, for those of you that are like, oh, how do I know? And do I have to learn all these things? It's not about reading a book. It's not about like mastering the subject. It's really just about learning some simple tools to get in your feminine and get in your body and be open to these experiences. And then it's amazing how much more the masculine is drawn to you and wants to connect you. And you can still, of course, have healthy boundaries to shut down any unwanted attention. I think a lot of times women think, well, if I'm really in my feminine, it's not going to be safe. And there may have been times in your life as a woman that it hasn't been safe. And so it's more about having the range than it is about constantly protecting yourself. You know, I think you made an analogy in one of our Facebook lives about the feminine, about this, that I'm not going to get exactly right. But I think about it, and I think you planted the seed in my mind of like, you know, you can wear a winter coat all the time just in case it might get cold, but it doesn't mean you actually need to be wearing like a winter coat. You know, we need to be able to have some versatility and how we express ourselves and how we manage ourselves. The other thing that comes to mind for when we might be in our masculine more on a date or in a relationship for me is when we think that we know better. Like, you know, this will come up for me often. Like it relates to the competition and being a better man that you shared. But a lot of times I don't know why, but I'll get in my head about like, oh, I think I know better, like a better way to drive or a better way to manage this thing. And even if I do, like, even if I actually know, like, you know what, I'm more familiar with this neighborhood, you know, I probably know a better way. When we jump in with advice, or when we jump in with like our sense of maybe ego about like, this is the right way to do it, or you're doing it wrong, or I know better, or I can do it faster, I can do it better than you. Yes, we might save a little time. We might save 3 minutes getting to our destination faster, but it erodes the relationship, because then it's saying, I don't trust you. I trust myself, you know, more than you trust yourself. And therefore I'm the alpha in this situation. And the other thing that happens is we take away the opportunity for the masculine to be in that place of tension. Like we said earlier, the masculine has to have challenge, has to have struggle, has to have tension, has to know that we can give them the space to figure it out. So it's been really challenging for me, but a very good lesson to, like, you know, bite my tongue or sit on my hands metaphorically. I would never not speak the truth in the name of like justice or safety or something that was really important to me. But when we get so attached to being right, or knowing what to do more than they do, or thinking we know better, then it can create that sense of the masculine actually pulling back. The masculine is like, oh, okay, well, I don't really want to fight about this, so I'm just going to let her take over. And then we end up feeling huffy, or I feel huffy by the end of the night, being like, oh man, he couldn't figure it out and I had to do everything. It's like, well, he could have figured it out if I just took a freaking breath, you know, and relaxed and enjoyed what was happening in the moment. So yeah, that's something else that comes up for me related to that.
That was a really good example, actually. Really good.
And then kind of related to that, kind of to segue, it's like, you know, what pushes away or repels the masculine? We've talked about not trusting him, you know, competing. Anything else that you want to add about what might push away the masculine?
I think criticism and complaining can definitely like they want to get away from it, or it kills their energy. And kind of that same thing, our women's voices, where they hear it in that part of the, their brain where they process music, it's probably like this big, like fingernails on a chalkboard, right? Complaining, which is similar, like disapproval, right? If they always feel like they're in trouble with us or they can't do anything right. I think it's also like maybe disrespect, like if we don't honor his time, his opinions, his values, his sense of self. Yeah, and then probably that withholding of admiration or appreciation would be another thing too.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you mentioned that. That is such a tough nut to crack, because I find that a lot of times women that I speak with and women that we work with, they'll be upset, of course, about the push-pull within the masculine, but they may not recognize their own push-pull within themselves. And so we sometimes get addicted to men who aren't available or who aren't interested in us. And then when a man is interested, either the same man who all of a sudden's interested or a different man who's interested, we withhold. We're kind of like, oh, well, now it doesn't match my story that I'm unlovable. This guy is actually treating me like I'm lovable, so I can't accept that. I have to withhold my appreciation. And a lot of times women will say, well, but if I'm really in my feminine, what if a guy comes up and flirts with me that I'm not attracted to? I'm like, cool, someone's flirting with you. It's awesome. You don't owe him anything. You don't have to like go out with him or reciprocate in any way, like butter him up somehow. It's not your job to make him feel better. Like simply the fact that he is flirting with you and that you're smiling in return and that you're not shutting him down is like a total win for him, And so I think sometimes we get used to the hot cold, and then we've internalized or co-created the hot cold by not being open, not being receptive, and withholding our radiance when someone is interacting with us. And so if you're watching this and you ever find that, you get into a relationship and it's really great, or maybe you're just dating and it's the first few weeks, and then all of a sudden he starts texting you more often and you're like, don't want to respond to his message, or you respond later, or you respond with one-word answers, or you think, I don't know, actually, maybe he's not the right guy for me, blah, 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 blah. And you come up with all these reasons to reject him. Just recognize that that might be a pattern within yourself of a fear of intimacy, or a fear of really receiving the masculine and all of his power. There was a time that I was out. I don't go to the bar that often, but I was out at the bar with a few people, and a guy came up to approach one of the women in the group and got her, or asked for her number and everything. And she said, oh, no, thank you. I'm not available for that right now. And then afterwards she was like, oh my God, I ruined his night. I feel so bad. And I was like, no, actually you should look over here, because he was talking to his friends like, yeah, he didn't, his friends didn't know if he got her number or not. It didn't matter. Like the fact that he took initiative, approached her, had a conversation, she was receptive. It's like he felt amazing just for going on that quest, so to speak. So you don't owe someone anything. Just to allow them to be in their masculine is a huge, I guess, win for them.
Beautiful. I love that.
Yeah. The other thing is, not letting him help. Like sometimes as women, we take on this idea that I can handle it. I gave the example of a man approaching a door at the same time as a woman, but even just related to any part of your life. I mean, I've found such comfort in being able to say, hey, I'd love your opinion on something, Jason. I mean, I'm not going to ask his opinion on something that I don't truly respect his opinion, but it's really nice to have other perspectives. And it's nice to have ideas about, a way that I might approach something. So the masculine loves to help, and it doesn't have to be just through like brute strength, although that's nice too. I can't remember where I was at. I think it was at just like a little group gathering in someone's home, like a party or something. And I literally saw one of the women who had lived there, she had a jar she couldn't open. This is so like 1950s, but I just got to share this example. And she came out and she had her boyfriend open the jar, and he just looked at Jason and he goes, I love that. And I didn't even say anything, but I was like, wow, why do they love that? And it's like, he didn't explain more because I didn't ask him why. I just let the moment be. But what I gathered from that intuitively is that he felt needed, he felt the opportunity to help, and he felt connected, right? Like if we're not letting someone help us, we're basically saying, I don't want to connect with you. I don't need you. I can figure this out. And so even if you're, you know, at a party and you're putting out more olives and you haven't talked to your guy for an hour and a half because you've been entertaining guests and you ask him to open the jar of olives, it's still a way for him to feel connected and reciprocal in that way. So that's just one other thing that I wanted to add.
Yeah, it's a big one.
Mm-hmm.
We're not receptive to what they want to contribute or how they want to help.
Yeah. And I find that muscle of receptivity, when we learn how to develop that, it not only helps our relationship or our dating, but it helps everywhere. Like so many of our clients get better jobs or get promotions or get new clients or have a raise or write books or, you know, write films. They have this like huge influx of opportunity and income and all of these other ways that they're feeling so full and nourished and nurtured and elevated because they've learned how to receive. So it's not just receiving from the masculine, it's learning how to receive so you can do more and go further and receive more.
Yeah.
Which is exciting. I think that was most of our questions. You know, if anyone's watching this live or watching the replay and you have a question, I encourage you to chime in. Either Tammera or I can reply back on the comments. You know, there's a lot of ways in our course that we work with the masculine energy within ourselves, like in the ways you mentioned in chapter 2, in chapter 8 of our program, and really throughout the way. And then there's so many ways that our queens get to understand the masculine energy from I bring a lot of perspective because my husband is a men's coach. And so I know a ton about the masculine just from his work and what he does with his clients. You know, him and I are always, we don't talk about specific clients, obviously, because everything's confidential, but we will talk about what we're teaching our clients or, you know, what we're learning and what we're excited to bring to them on our next group call and all of that. And then of course, you know, the women in our program are learning a lot about the masculine from these man panels that we talked about. I think we have maybe 6 recordings. So we probably have like 12 hours of man panels, you know, for people to digest. And these are all really high quality men that have integrity, but they also have sensitivity and they're emotionally attuned and all of that. So is there anything else that you want to add, Tammera, before we wrap up?
No, it was so fun. I love learning having you share your wisdom. It was fun.
Yeah. Yes, and you sharing yours too. Yeah, I love it. I feel like I could talk about this all night. It's just, it's really nice to appreciate and notice the nuances and then feel what's possible there. So if you're watching this live or on the replay and you're struggling to both understand the masculine, but also appreciate the masculine, or if you find that men say you're intimidating, or if you find that the guys you're attracted to don't show any interest and the guys you're not attracted to do show interest, or if you find that you get into a relationship and then it turns into friend zone, or, you know, the connection just kind of dies, or if you get into a relationship and you find that you're the one who's getting kind of turned off and you feel the desire to run that hot cold pattern we talked about, then we would love to connect. We offer free 20-minute discovery calls, and you can book your time just by going to violetlange.com/talk. Those calls are really powerful because you get to better understand what's going on in your dating and your love life. And if we feel like it's a good fit for us to potentially work together, then we'll invite you to do a second call, which is also free. And that's more of a strategy session where we will create a customized game plan for you based on your sticking points and based on these deeper patterns that might be going on. But the first step is to just go to violetlange.com/talk and set up that free discovery call. So thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you, Tammera, for your time. I really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to our next one in August.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Tammera. Bye.
Bye.